Howdy, howdy. It's Trisha Lee. I'm here in Alberta, Canada with my amazing partner, Larry Lever. Larry is the VP of Development for King Sunshine Solar Systems and TK Environmental. And tonight we're going to be talking about the announcement that was made, I'm not sure when, Larry might know, about closing down all of North America's coal-fired power plants because they're big polluters, and people are very environmentally aware and want to see changes made to the way that energy is produced. So coal-fired power plants were at one time a disruptive technology, and now as they leave the marketplace as our power providers, there's bound to be a lot of disruption in the way that we make and use energy moving forward into the future. So Larry, can you tell us a bit more about the announcement that was made about these plant closures, please?
Yeah, sure. The
I
government
can
has,
barely hear you. Can you speak up or
yeah,
check your volume?
sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
All right. The Canadian or the government of Alberta announced that they're going to be closing down coal-fired power plants. They want them all closed down pretty much by 2020. And one of the first that they're focusing in on is one called Sheerness Coal Generating Station, which is located close to the village of Hanna. And its capacity is about 780 megawatts. So it's a pretty big plant. And what I think is going to be happening is that they're looking to supply alternative energy in burning coal, of course, possibly looking at natural gas for powering it, but I'm not sure exactly what plans are, or whether they just plan on electricity from somewhere else on the grid. It's going to talk about actually Dan. He's got a lot of information on what's actually capable or what we're capable of when this plant does shut down. Of course, King Sunshine Solar Systems is very close to bringing out technology that is solar thermal type of power, and the technology that we've got adequate for providing or for a burning generating station to switch over to. So if you were to compare uh, sheerness to something like Ivanpah solar thermal in Arizona or Nevada, uh, Ivanpah puts out about 392 megawatts, which is, more than half of what Sheerness puts out. But I think what we have to think about is what the disruptive technology here is going to be is it's kind of a weird angle because the alternative energy is what's the disruptive technology or what the disruptive technology is. There's kind of an issue right now. Um, we don't have a really big infrastructure for alternative energy yet in Alberta. It hasn't. It's growing slowly. However, it hasn't really caught on yet. And so, as we noted from the trade commissioner when we were in Dallas in 2011, explained to us that solar power in all of North America was generally in its infancy. That was in 2011. Here we are in 2016. There's been a little bit of growth, but not the kind of growth that we need to see. So The reason why the coal plant is shutting down is because, yeah, there's alternative ways of making electricity for people around that area. So, for example, when we do this switch from coal to alternative energy, what we're going to have to really focus in on is how are we going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, or better yet, how are we going to use the power that we're going to make from alternative energy? How are we going to use it in a smart way? So what we're kind of what me and Dan were discussing earlier before the hangout was how are we going to provide the residents that draw, or the people or industries, whoever draws off that power source for Sheerness, how what are they going to have to do in order to not consume as much power? So basically, when we've been using coal for so many years, our power source has been quite abundant, and so what the alternative energy or renewable energy, whatever you want to call it, is going to do is it's going to disrupt the construction industry, and it's going to disrupt things like the lighting industry. So, and heating. I don't think we use a lot for heating for coal. It's mainly for electrical generators is what Sheerness is designed for. But there are those places, I'm sure a lot of people in that region more than likely heat their businesses and homes using electricity rather than gas. I might be off on that. I'm not exactly sure.
And
Uh,
where?
when it did happen, I did contact when I did get the information that they're planning on closing Sheerness. I did contact the town of um, Hannah, or the village of Hannah, and I made some recommendations to them and tried to provide a little comfort for them, because a lot of them are really, pardon the pun, they're in the dark when it comes to this changeover from coal. I think a lot of people are thinking, well, if we're not able to burn coal, we're going to freeze to death, which is really not going to be the situation.
No.
It's going to be a gradual switch from burning coal to doing renewable energy. And so, Dan, I was wondering if you might be able to provide a little insight with how um, technologies like LEDs and different types of construction, maybe even net zero housing, and maybe net zero uh, factories and businesses might be able to, you know,
Hmm.
make this transition a lot easier.
Yeah, basically what I've been researching, well, especially with LED lights, you're going from 60 watts incandescence down to 6 watts. Because commercially, you can go from 500 watts down to, or 400 watts down to 200, maybe less. So that helps the commercials a lot. In the building industry, I researched net zero houses in Edmonton. There's an outfit building quite a few of them, and they've tried it over the last 5 years, but basically you just insulate really well. You make your walls a foot thick. You put, instead of 12-inch, I think code is 12 inches of insulation in the attic. You can even double that. And then they'd use passive solar. If you can face your big picture window south, they say they get 30% of their heat from the sun. They use concrete on the floor so that heats up during the day, then it disperses in the night. Then they got solar panels, as many solar panels as they can put on the garage in the house, so they produce their own electricity. They even had an air pump. It's kind of like a geothermal pump, and they could take the heat out of the air, even if it was 30 below, to heat the house. It was a very efficient thermal pump from Germany. Hot water on demand. They never had a gas line.
Well, so that you might even say that if they could retrofit their the buildings and homes in that region. They might not even have to draw off that power as long as they make their houses more energy efficient.
Yeah, you could drop your power usage quite a bit. It would be the city would have to really get involved to help the people in the city or in the town of Hannon to do this, and the government will have to help too. They're the one closing the plant, but it's not impossible. It's just it should have been done maybe before they started shutting down the power plant. But they're going to have there's lots of natural gas fired power plants now that are more efficient. They're going to bring in power, and they're still going to be paying their rates. But if they want to say, okay, you shut down our power plant, we're not going to use so much power. There's alternatives. I think it's cheaper to use less power and find out how to be energy efficient than it is try to produce more.
Exactly.
And the demand for power is always going up, so we got to keep finding ways to use less of it and still not lose the convenience that it offers.
So as far as lighting goes, I imagine lighting just generally as a resident, I would say the way we use electricity is probably consumes about half as what we do for heating. If I'm not, does that sound pretty accurate?
What, the electricity?
Yeah.
Well, you even need electricity to run your furnaces.
Right.
But that's very little compared to the gas going through the furnace. But yeah, I don't know what the ratio is, like for electricity to gas for heating.
Yeah.
But of course, we're using electricity even in the summer where you don't need heating in the summer. For about 4 months, you're not really heating your building very much. As far as new buildings, you can engineer them so that you're using natural light as much as possible. I've seen lots of buildings where they got their lights on 20 or 8, 9 hours a day. When you got so much light, you don't even need those lights above you. They could be on a separate switch. The first row next to the windows could be on a separate switch. You don't even turn them on until you need them in the wintertime or if you're open past sunset.
Yeah, one of the issues I'm kind of thinking is if they shut down the coal plant, a lot of renewable energies aren't able to produce electricity when the sun goes down. Except the only one that really comes to my mind would be like something like the Tesla Powerwall would be able to assist for lighting for people.
Yes, well that's a huge game changer. Plus the wind can blow at night. You still got wind energy, but you can't rely on it as much unless we had more of it. But the Tesla Powerwall is a big game changer because you can charge the battery with the grid or solar power, and then it can be used at night when you need it.
Yeah, and they're doing some amazing things with tidal energy. I seen a show, I believe it was Denmark maybe, or some like the Netherlands or what, somewhere.
I think Australia's working a lot on tidal wave too.
Yeah. Well, they have this really cool thing. It looks like this big metal worm, and it has something. It almost works like a piston. It's really, really cool, and they're making quite a bit of electricity with that. So with considering that like so much of the planet is covered with this ocean water and has this tidal effect.
Yes, it's constant, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, that could be a super alternative energy to start replacing some of these coal plants, I think.
How do you get the power from the ocean to Hannah, though?
I'm not sure.
I guess
that's
probably require sort of new style of power grid.
Well, definitely in our area, we'd rely more on wind and solar, but considering that a vast majority of the global population is on the coast, that should make a big difference for being able to supplement.
More power where you live sustainably.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's even, I've seen on a system where, I think it's Seattle or Oregon, or someplace in the States, in Washington or Oregon, they're producing power in their wastewater system. They got generators, windmill-style generators, and they're installing them into their wastewater. and they're producing electricity as the water's being pumped because they're always water flowing, so they're picking up energy that way. It sounds like it's not inexpensive, but it's there for long term, and the payback is there. But there's a lot of systems in place you can do to. All depends on where you live and what's available and what is your solution or what's your problem. There's a different solution for every different region.
Well,
It's not one. It's not
coal,
one size fits all.
so if we're looking at the coal power plants in Alberta,
Mm-hmm.
I think most of them are run by TransAlta, if I'm not mistaken. I think
Yeah.
ATCO is quite involved, like it's
Yeah.
almost like a partnership between the two. So,
Yeah. That has some. Yeah.
so what do we know about TransAlta and ATCO Power as far as maybe some of the solutions that they might have?
Well, right now I work for Atco Gas, and I know they're looking into chips. They call them or what is it? I keep forgetting what the chip means. It's combined heat and electric production or power, and they're run by gas. They're a generator, but they use the waste heat off the unit produce electricity, but the heat is used for the heating the building.
So you mean CCHP?
Yeah, I guess that's what they call them, cold generator.
That's combined cooling, heat, and power.
Yeah, right. That's it. And they're looking to go to, like they say, the new hockey rink in Camrose would be a good candidate because they're looking for bigger corporations that could use this. The savings would be huge. Plus, they did go to Japan to look at what they're using for residential cogeneration or combined heat and power run by gas, because every house has a gas line to it, and you can use that heat. Well, you can produce your own electricity then, but you could also capture that heat, so it's more efficient.
Has anybody heard anything on whether the government is considering nuclear energy in Alberta?
They were a few years ago, like I belong to an organization that said we were trying to stop nuclear power from coming in. They were thinking of putting them up north, and with these big power lines, the idea was they might be. They always said no, they weren't considering nuclear, but yet I know the way the government talks, they always leave it open for interpretation. It might not be now, but it might be later. And that big power line was part of it because we don't need all that power, and it goes straight down to southern Alberta. So we know it's probably going to go to the States, and they want to sell power to California because it's a huge market.
Well, I think that Calgary in Alberta is probably drawing a lot of energy off. I think it might be NMAX or Bullfrog Power, and that is running places like the Pincher Creek, Pincher Creek wind generating facility, and the other one in there's some kind of ridge. I can't remember the name of the ridge. Uh, all have a lot of windmills operating in that area because it's very windy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering how much power they're actually consuming in Calgary from those wind generators, or whether they're actually sending it just into the grid to wherever it's needed. I got a funny feeling that that's where we're kind of headed in these situations. Is a lot of the alternative energies. I think they really want to keep the power grid um, operating in a similar way, so that wherever the power is needed, that's where the power
Yeah.
goes, no matter where it's being generated.
Yeah, it's hard to isolate it the way the grid's set up. But I think NMAX also built a power plant in Calgary or close to Calgary where they are capturing the heat, and they're trying to ship the heat that they don't need and heat some buildings in the downtown core, which is a very good idea if it's close and it works,
Yeah.
because it's another source of income that you're just usually a lot of those power plants are just wasting. It's just going into atmosphere.
Well, it's what boils down to, it's really going to be quite a challenge to society to make this transition from burning stuff to not burning anything, which I think is really, I believe I read an article from I can't remember the exact name of the publication, but they mentioned I think it was something to do with the Alberta government that in the year 2100 they will have all sustainable energy and nothing is going to be burnt. That's their objective.
That's what they're trying to, as their goal, trying to shoot for.
Yeah, and so it's that seems I think they could actually reach that goal sooner. You know, it's just a
Oh,
matter of it's really I think we've been burning stuff to stay warm ever since caveman days. So to do things differently is going to require a lot of new technology.
yeah. But the best part about it is the technology exists, and with if we start using it more, we'll start to learn more how to use it more efficiently or set it up a little better when we build new buildings. And of course, we've got to retrofit a lot of older buildings.
That's right.
I
And
know. Go ahead.
I think a lot of those we've chatted about alternative energies that were based on the findings of Nikola Tesla and similar scientists that came up with things that would years ago, 100 years ago, that would actually jeopardize the oil and gas industry. It'll be interesting to see if researchers can go back and bring that technology to where we are today in a time where it's needed. I'm pretty sure somebody out there must know of the experiments that were done by Tesla, and he had a lot of incredible ways of making energy that I've heard rumors about, which are actually quite mind-boggling. And I've actually seen some experiments that duplicated some of Tesla's findings that didn't make any sense to me at all, but they seem to actually make electricity. So
Hmm.
there seems to be all these different ways that we're going to be able to power our society, and it's going far beyond solar thermal, far beyond photovoltaics. I think it's actually going to start involving I'd like to say lost technologies or technologies that were developed but were too threatening to the infrastructure
Yeah.
where they
Well, I understand right now that with the power grid, you lose a certain percentage of power. Just send it down the line, and then when you switch it from one power down to another power, you lose a certain percentage, and every time you switch it down, you're losing another percentage. So I like to see where we can start producing power closer to where we need it,
that makes a
and
lot of
then
sense.
and then you need to produce less of it right from there.
Yeah, and a really good example of that is this is another Elon Musk
So,
situation is with his brother's company Solar City. With what that is their strategy is to make each residence self-sufficient so that they're not relying on any type of external power source, and they are heavily focused on California and surrounding area, and they're just doing gangbuster business, installing their panels and stuff. Of course, there's a lot of um, entities out there that are throwing out, spike bells,
cur-
trying to slow
curveballs. Yeah, some states are charging people that get off the grid a 40% surcharge. And I've heard of some Florida. There's a lady trying to live off the grid, and they're trying to make it illegal for her because she's not hooked up to the water, electricity, and now they're trying to make it difficult on her. And there's other people. And then I think there's a community in Texas. They tried to shut them down, and they were just common people living commonly, trying to live organically, and they weren't. I don't know. They weren't doing anything really disruptive, but Texas tried to shut them down. So there's some strange things
Yeah,
happening.
there was a story I think I heard about a year ago about a lady that was arrested for collecting rainwater
I
for
heard
her
that.
garden. It's like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
they own the rainwater now?
No, they don't. I'd fight that
Yeah.
tooth and nail.
Well, she went to, I think it was a he. He went and served some time in prison over it. It's so ridiculous.
Well, they had a
Is he?
uprising in South America somewhere. I forget which country. I think Bolivia. Just kind of off topic, but it's still disruptive. Um, they were letting a French company to come in and maintain the water system because it was old and they needed upgrading. They didn't have the money to upgrade it, so they come in, doubled everybody's rates, and they were poor people anyway. They couldn't afford the rates. Told them they couldn't collect rainwater. They had uprisings, and I think there's a farmer. He wasn't very educated, but he was ended up leading the group, and there was deaths and riots. And finally, the government says, "Okay." They told the company, "I guess the people don't want you." They kicked them back out of the country because the people just rose up and said, "This is ridiculous. We can't afford this, and we want if we want to collect water, it's our right."
It's it isn't really off topic though, because if you look at the way
Well,
the coal-fired plants typically operate, they tend to use a lot of
a lot
fresh
of water.
water. So
Yeah. Well, it's all combined together. Like, yeah.
by closing those plants, then that may give us more access to like usable water.
Well,
But
California is already in a drought situation, so they can't afford to use any more water than they got already.
which is probably a big part of the push to close the plants is the water issue. It's probably
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of gas-fired power plants now getting very efficient, I've been told. You can fire them up in 15 minutes to get them up to speed, shut them down, where you can't do that with coal. You can make coal plants more efficient and cleaner the way they are if they wanted to. But it's tough just to get rid of them all overnight. It's going to be gradual, and you got to have something in place
Yeah, it's not
before you decide to shut them down.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's going to be overnight at all.
No.
Like it's going to be at least 4 years, I think, before the plant is actually turned on
Oh, well.
or turned off. I'm not sure because I keep hearing the year 2020
Yeah.
as when these
There's
plants are going to be
lots of time to come up with an alternative solution
Yeah,
well,
and
some
keep.
of them have already been closed down. I believe in California, they've closed a lot of their coal plants, and probably for the reasons you're talking about, Dan, is the water issue. And then, in addition, that California's kind of led the way. They already have a lot of solar access to a lot of solar power, so
Yeah.
probably they've been able to replace that with their solar technology. And I imagine it's similar in Arizona and. But here in Canada, it's a little trickier. We definitely will probably still have to rely on like these natural gas plants,
Yeah.
which are a lot cleaner and a lot better. But at the same time, they do still pollute a bit. But it's a little trickier when you're in a
Well,
place that doesn't receive as much sunlight. Or
well, what I've heard, Alberta does receive quite a bit of sunlight, and more than Germany, and they've done great things with solar. Plus, most people don't realize that solar photovoltaic panels work better in a colder climate than they would in California. The more heat they get, the more inefficient they are. So our colder climate helps us that way. But of course,
exactly.
being the winter time, less sunlight, we need to. Anybody who wants to go off the grid has to have twice as many panels for the winter time because we got twice as much or less light.
That's why I
But
think it's going to be. That's why I think it's going to be very much a sharing sort of situation where wherever it's windy, we're going to be drawing off that energy.
oh
Wherever it's
yes,
sunny, you know,
yeah,
it's got to be. I think it still has to. Uh, the power grid's still going to have to exist in order
and
so that we can have
yeah,
energy.
and what I understand too is if they up our power rates too much, a lot of companies, especially the oil sands or anybody producing energy now, especially they can start buying systems and producing their own power before they'll pay those heavy prices just to get the grid to bring it to you because the more electricity you use, the higher your service fee is.
Right.
And then it makes sense to produce your own power. Plus, you got the manpower, the engineering maybe already there that can help you, or you can just hire the ones that you need. I've heard that when they used to flare, well, they still flare natural gas quite a bit, but there is a company I read 20 years ago that bought these systems that you could put on the flare stacks, produce their own electricity, and their payback was 10 years, and that was 20 years ago. And they were trying to utilize that flare stack that they were just spitting into atmosphere and never getting paid for.
Oh
And I was
yeah,
wondering why that couldn't be mandatory.
yeah, and I think this is all coming around again to uh, creating a society or a world that we live in where things are no longer being burnt, or a
Yeah.
real minimal amount of
If you
burning going on, because
if
I,
and if you are burning, you capture as much as you can.
yeah, and I know for I heard from my uncle that there is so much energy produced just by having natural gas in the ground. The heat created by that natural gas continuously. We're not talking burning it, but just the pressure of the gas itself creates so much heat that it's possible to tap into that energy form up north. And this is we're talking northern Alberta. If we could tap into that source of heat energy, I don't think we'd have any problems at all. And that's without burning the gas, so it stays
Yeah.
there. It
Well,
stays there for as long
yeah,
as.
that's another source of energy is geothermal, where you got the heat in the ground already, where it makes sense to capture that. I think I read somebody was telling me about Yellowknife. They have lots of mines underneath Yellowknife or close by that are not being utilized anymore. They're thinking of flooding them with water and then picking up the heat, like using geothermal to pick up that heat because the water will be constant temperature underground.
Yeah, it's 10
So
degrees
you
Celsius.
can use it for air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter.
It's
But
amazing when we have winters where it's minus 40 outside above the surface. Underneath the ground, it's actually at 10 above.
and you don't have to go very deep, maybe 8, 9 feet.
Yeah, and so we can survive at 10 above. That's pretty
Even
easy.
air conditioning, there's people that use pipes, put them on the north side of the house, and use a fan and suck that cool air into the house, and it's going to be cooler than what it is inside. And you don't need air conditioning. And then it comes down to insulating your house as much as possible to whatever energy you use. You keep that energy a lot longer. Better windows, better insulation.
It makes us wonder if one day we could shut down a lot of the pipelines, and instead of pumping oil, we pump water through them and draw off the energy that's underneath the ground in the pipeline.
Yeah, there was actually an outfit trying to do that, but I think he went. He was he had an idea where he would use windmills as a pump and pump water through some system and then run maybe electric generators through it. I forget the system. This is something I found as a blurb years ago. I think something happened that didn't really work for him, but he was trying it. I can't remember what the problem was, but not saying it couldn't work if you had better financing or he was doing something.
There's a lot of abandoned pipelines underneath the ground in
Yeah, I think
Alberta.
that's what he was trying to utilize some of that system. But of course, you have to maintain that line. You have to make money to maintain it.
Well, it's much easier to maintain it if you're running something like glycol through it instead of heavy crude.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
yeah, so there's
well,
all
there's so many different things.
yeah, it really boggles the mind what we've discovered, uh, even in the past. Well, you look at previous societies and civilizations like the Aztecs and the Mayans and Ethiopians, even how the different ways they used to do things. We could probably, if we can tap into that knowledge, adapt that to our lifestyle today. And yeah, I believe we could probably get things done before 2100. We could probably get it done by 2030.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, we have to start living with nature instead of fighting it and trying to start from scratch and build stuff when use the structure that's already there. And that's what the native populations used to do. They worked with nature with what was there.
Yeah. Well, even on our property that we bought, the 80 acres that we just let rebuild itself, like Mother Nature basically takes care of things, and it takes, it's been 7 years since anything's been happening on that land, and I think it's very close to being the way it was before anybody was on it.
Yeah, nature can come back faster than a lot of people realize.
Yeah. So who knows what can happen if we can have a society in a short time that does not burn anything, uh, and we can go for 7 years without burning anything. It'd be really interesting to see what kind of effect that would have
Air quality.
on our lives.
Any air quality. We won't be going to the doctor so much because we don't feel too good. And that's just probably the air we breathe and the water we drink is getting contaminated.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of a balance. So getting back to the whole shutting down of this plant, I don't think it's a really big deal. I think it's kind of traumatic for people that are in that area, but
Yes.
I think they just need to be educated that yeah, this is just a temporary situation, that it's going to be a lot better for them in a
Well,
different way that's not burning this
well,
stuff.
they got to start focusing on the solution instead of the focusing on the problem.
Yeah.
And then the solution will be there if they focus on it.
Hmm.
And it'll also create jobs where they can move from one job into the next job
Exactly.
and produce energy where they live. They don't have to move to another community so they can play with coal again. Because
Well,
that's what they've known for years, and some people can't change or find it difficult to change.
well, I've often wondered whether it's possible to draw energy from coal itself without burning it.
Mm, I know they gasify it, but that takes energy to do that. But I forget why they're doing that. But
You have the craziest ideas that ever come out of people's mouths, Larry.
I haven't
Let's
heard
try.
of.
Let's try and get blood out of a stone while we're making power out of coal without burning it.
You never
I have,
know. They're doing some things with carbon that I didn't imagine them ever doing, like the carbon nanotubes. When I started hearing about what they're capable of doing, they've just scratched the surface. They've made this is a very new technology, and carbon is coal is basically carbon, is it not?
yes, it's carbon. Uh, I do know of one guy, a friend of mine. He had a coal-fired furnace set up in his yard, and he heated his shop and his house with it. I think he used it for 10, 15 years. There's a little bit of maintenance, but they do wear out. So he bought a new one, and he said that one is a lot more efficient. I think he fired it up this fall to heat the floor in his house, in his shop, and it was 30 by 40. He said he calculated he only used $5 worth of coal because it burns so more efficiently than the old one.
That's amazing.
And that even that will help use less coal, but less stuff in the atmosphere if he so desires. He was also looking at buying a generator that would produce electricity with gas because he has gas on the place also. Right now, insurance companies will not insure you if you have a coal-fired furnace unless you have gas backup. Because a lot of those coal-fired furnaces, if you even if check it every 4 days, if you're not living there, something can disrupt the system. The auger can plug up, and you might not have heat for a few days, and things will freeze up. So you're not gaining much if you have to have a gas riser on your house and a gas furnace for backup. It's a long payback, and
But
they
it's
did
also
that.
like the number of options that we have. Even if it's a if it's down comes down to an issue of getting greenhouse gas emissions down to a certain level where it does not accept the balance of nature,
Hmm.
that's probably a good goal to shoot for. So that's
Oh
not
yeah,
a big deal.
definitely.
And so the start would be to, I guess, attack coal. It's
Yeah.
ironic that we actually burn coal here because of the history that coal had in England with the black lung diseases and things like that. You would have thought society would have said, yeah, let's get all the way away from this material and just let it sit.
Yeah. But they always go to what's easiest. But coal suffers huge ups and downs too. Right now, the price of coal is so low because of the economy slowing down, that they're going bankrupt, some of them. That some of the companies that ship coal for steel plants and aluminum plants.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
so the natural selection takes over, where even if you want to keep using coal, they go out of business, so they have to switch, or somebody else buys them and it's cheaper to buy them. Somebody loses money, somebody always gains. But also with the demand for, and then if the demand for coal keeps going down, well, you're definitely not going to keep mining it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So
Less of the demand. As the demand goes down, there's a demand for something else that's going to be going up. I have a feeling that there's going to be some more discoveries regarding carbon that are on the horizon that still need to be discovered. Um, there's this ganolidium, or is that, am I pronouncing it right?
yeah, right, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that I discovered that can actually be used for cooling by using magnetic fields. So we're actually going to be doing some experimenting with that sort of material in the future for cooling the cool side of the electric ground. But another amazing aspect of this material is that you can get it in other forms. Because right now the main gadolinium is quite pricey. However, it's because it's not in great demand. So it's a rare earth material. It's a rare earth metal. So there's a limited supply about it. But they also say that about neodymium magnets. So although it's a limited supply, it seems to always be there. So if we can make use of these materials, there is the potential of having refrigerators that are that have such a low consumption of energy that they basically run themselves. I believe that might be a possibility.
Hmm. Well, I'm starting to wonder in this country, with being so cold for 6 months of the year, why we can't use some of that air for refrigeration instead of producing electricity to make
Yeah,
cold. But that's another ball game too.
I've always wondered about that too, and it seems um, like it would be an easy thing to do. If you look back in history, people had cold cellars, not refrigerators, and that was very sustainable, and it seemed to work well for people. So um, maybe there's some value in going back to that type of idea where that it worked for so very long. And the thing is, it maybe wasn't as convenient if you had to go down to the cold cellar to get your food as just opening your fridge, but certainly was more efficient and more sustainable.
Well,
And
with the construction material and construction knowledge we have today, we can make our cold storages a lot more efficient than they used to be.
Oh, definitely.
And plus, growing your own garden, so we don't have to ship our food 1,500 miles, and it doesn't really taste great when it gets here, would be nice. So I think the NDP government even mentioned maybe trying to help out greenhouses in Alberta so we can start producing more of our own food right where we live.
Yeah, I agree
And
with that
and,
100%.
and I just saw on Facebook, Costco is going to help farmers go organic because they're running out of organic produce in the States. There's 1% of the farms are organic, and they're about 5% of the demand.
Wow.
So
and that demand is going up all the time.
yeah, there's one piece of land in California. They said it had been fallow for a few years. So this one organic farmer wanted to buy it, but he couldn't afford it. So Costco's going to help him buy it so he can produce food for them. So they got a more of a supply. So he's got a guaranteed sale for his produce, and he also got help buying the land so he can expand. So the big companies are starting to get involved.
Yeah, tell us about it. We have Staples sponsoring an event we're putting on for Earth Day.
Yeah,
So
they're pretty good too. I think they only put on half their lights during the summer to save
mhm.
energy. So I
Yeah,
talked
they,
about
they support recycling a lot in the community.
okay. I even talked about LEDs, but I got to get back to it.
Oh, you got someone phoning about your LEDs?
No, no. I said I talked to Staples, the manager in Camrose,
Oh,
about LEDs, but I think she gave me a card with the corporate number, and I haven't got back to him yet. That would
yeah,
be.
well, um, yeah, if you can just like really stack those benefits for people that like big companies like that, they want to do things. Um,
Well, it helps their bottom line.
yeah, it helps their image and attracts more customers, and people want to know that the dollars that they're spending are being managed in a way that is sustainable and will not leave as big of a
Well,
carbon footprint as they call it.
I think some outfits are thinking more on saving when things are going badly than when things are going good, because when things are going good, they can pay their bills, but now they've got to think how they're going to cut costs.
And then that's a big opportunity.
Yeah, in many different areas, not just electricity.
And those
Uh,
lights are will definitely go a long way to
I know
being
in 20 years ago in California, there was a story that they were planning to build 10 new power plants because the demand for power was going up, but then they deregulated their power system. Rates went up so high that people were screaming about their power rates, but they started saving energy. They saved so much energy, they didn't have to build those 10 power plants.
Yeah.
And lots
amazing.
of people don't really consider saving energy until the power bill gets so bad that they start thinking they got to do something.
And it's really, there's a lot of really simple things that people can do to conserve energy from, using power bars that you turn off when you're not
Mm-hmm.
using the items that are plugged into it.
I've
There's
seen
all kinds of little things, just turning off the light when you leave the room.
I've seen people leave lights on 24/7 on an outside light where they could get a motion
Mhm.
sensor.
Yeah, those
Of
motion
course,
sensors
change
are
it to
great.
LED so they only burn at 6 watts instead of 60. But there's so many. And then I heard I couldn't find the article on Google, but I've heard every once in a while they mentioned if every household in Canada changed to maybe one or two or three LED light bulbs, the power saving would be huge.
hmm
It
And it
just
will be. People are moving in that direction more and more
yes,
all the time.
definitely, yep.
When you mentioned at the start of this hangout that the 60-watt bulb can be replaced by a 6-watt LED,
Yep.
that is a dramatic savings
That's
right there.
10%.
That's amazing.
Yes,
No,
and
it's
they last longer
100%.
where you don't have to spend money to go uptown to buy more lights because LEDs last. I figured it out at 50,000 hours, 8-hour day. They're going to last 15 years.
hmm
So I guess that's what Hannah's going to have to start looking at is getting LED lights in all their businesses and homes and
Well, they could employ a lot of people that worked at the mine until they can find other jobs or moving to. Well, then from changing lights, they could be putting up solar panels. They could be building more, putting in an old building. You could reclad it, put 1.5 inch styrofoam on. I know of an outfit designed by an engineer in Vancouver. It's called Solar Wall. If you're operating a factory, and you got to do fresh air, so much fresh air every minute for your workers. They bring in the fresh air, but the solar wall heats the air up before you even get into the building. So you're utilizing the fans you need anyway, but you're bringing in warm air, so that cuts your heat bill. They're even
they have that on a school in Yellowknife.
yeah, I think Ford put one on their building in Ontario. Like I haven't looked at it lately, but I think it's huge. I think they're global. Oh, another thing they did too. If you put them on the walls, they help heat the building. But if you go to South America near the equator where they have to dry food, they put them on the roof and they can bring in the hot air to help dry their food that they need to dry instead of using propane or some other source to heat it to dry.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of solutions back there. I've been loving listening, mainly listening to you guys talk about solutions pretty much for the
Uh,
last hour.
Another one, I don't know if I told you, I must have talked to you about before, but there's a light bulb out there you can make out of a Coke bottle.
Wow.
And it only, of course, it only works during the day.
How do you power it?
You don't have to. The sun does it.
Oh, okay.
You take a Coke bottle, you take the label off, you fill it up with water, a couple capfuls of bleach so it doesn't get algae growing. They cut a hole in the roof, in the tin roof in the poor countries. They put it in the roof with a flashing. The hardest job is to flash it so you don't have a leak later because of they have heavy rains and you don't want it leaking. And what happens in the slums in a lot of places is they're built so close together they have no windows.
Right.
And they're in the dark in their house and they don't want to turn the lights on because they can't afford the power because their power rates are worse than ours and they make less money. So you put one of these Coke bottles in through the roof. It's like a 55-watt light bulb. It can light up the house when the sun is shining.
Wow, that's
And if you
amazing.
look up on YouTube, Coke bottle lights, Philippines, and
Cool.
there's excellent videos on that. And I put 2 in Honduras just to test them out. I went to a mission trip, and they had a building on the back of their building, and they had 2 light bulbs in it. No windows, but they always had to go in and get their tools, and it was dark. So I put 2 Coke bottle lights in there, and they lit up better than the incandescent bulbs.
Fabulous. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so Dan is actually going to the Philippines in a couple of days, so he may or may not be able to join us. He'll be on it'll be early in the morning when he's there when we do the hangout, and it is the Philippines, so internet stability may be an issue. But if we don't see Dan while he's in the Philippines, we'll be missing him because he contributes a lot of really great information to these disruptive technology hangouts. He's very knowledgeable, especially when it comes to solar power and LEDs. So we really appreciate you, Dan, and we're going to miss you if we don't get to hear from you while you're in the Philippines. But just to let anybody know that may be watching on the page, I'll be jumping onto All Access training. It's going to be featuring a couple named Mike and Michelle, and they're just amazing people that are living their dreams. And feel free to click the button below the video and you can join us for that training. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be talking about, but they've had some amazing success with internet marketing. And so if you don't live under a rock, you probably have observed that there's a lot of sales happening on the internet, and whenever a sale occurs, you may or may not know, but there's somebody out there sitting behind their computer that earns a commission when we make purchases online, and that somebody could be you. You could have an Amazon store where you could sell products. You could sell things on eBay. There's all kinds of different offers that you could potentially earn commissions from, and the Empower Network is all about teaching you how to be able to structure an offer and make sales on the internet. So I'll be tuning into the All Access training and seeing what kind of information they have to share about the disruptive technology that is internet marketing. So thank you so much, Larry and Dan, for joining us to talk about these coal plant closures. I want everybody to know that I'm a firm believer that in this life, absolutely anyone can be, do, and have anything they want, or we can have everything we want. So click the button and start learning how. Have an amazing day, and if I don't see you all in the future, I will see you out in the pasture tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Larry, thank you.